We often think silence means someone is done, that they've let go, moved on, or simply don't care anymore. But the truth is, silence doesn't always mean absence. In fact, silence can be the loudest strategy of all, especially when it comes from someone who once showed interest, affection, or even obsession. When a man suddenly becomes quiet, the instinct is to believe he's lost interest, but more often than not, it's not that simple. People use silence to gain control. When someone goes quiet after a deep connection, especially when emotions were involved, it's rarely because they feel nothing. In fact, the more intense the connection was, the more likely silence becomes a tactic rather than a genuine sign of detachment. Why? Because silence creates mystery. It invites speculation, and speculation pulls your focus right back to him. Think about how often your mind replays moments when you don't get closure, the unanswered text, the sudden distance. The unspoken words. Your mind doesn't shut off, it goes into overdrive. That's the power of silence. He may not be speaking, but he's still occupying space in your thoughts. And if he was obsessed before, trust me, that obsession hasn't disappeared, it's just found a quieter form. For many men, silence is a way to shift the dynamic. If he used to be the one texting first, showing effort, opening up, and now suddenly he's nowhere to be found, it could be because he didn't get what he expected. Maybe his effort wasn't reciprocated the way he hoped. Maybe his ego took a hit. Maybe he thought he had the upper hand and realized he didn't. So now, instead of pushing harder, he pulls back. Not because he's over you, but because he wants you to start questioning yourself. Silence is his way of turning the emotional tables, and it works. Suddenly, you find yourself checking his stories, wondering if he's met someone else, replaying what you said or didn't say. That's not detachment, that's design. It's a strategic pause designed to make you feel the absence, but the irony is, the one using silence often feels the weight of it even more. Because while you're confused, he's hoping you're still paying attention. While he's not calling, he's still checking if you've moved on. While he's not speaking, he's still obsessing, just silently. The truth is, obsession doesn't always show up in obvious ways. Some people chase, others withdraw, but the intent is the same: to be remembered, to be wanted, to be needed. And when someone's obsessed but afraid to look vulnerable, silence becomes the shield they hide behind. It's not that he doesn't feel, it's that he doesn't want you to see how much he does. And here's the most important thing to understand: his silence says more about him than about you. It's a mirror of his internal battle, not a reflection of your worth. When a man is obsessed but silent, he's caught between pride and desire, between wanting to reach out and fearing rejection, between holding on and pretending to let go. Don't misread silence as peace. Sometimes the quietest people are the most emotionally chaotic. He may not be blowing up your phone, but he's thinking, remembering, wondering. Obsession doesn't need noise, it needs space, and silence gives it room to grow. So if you're sitting there, doubting your impact just because he hasn't spoken, stop. His silence might be screaming louder than any words ever could. When a man pulls away after showing deep interest, when he suddenly goes cold or stops reaching out, your first instinct might be to chase, to ask what went wrong, to reignite what felt so real. That's human, especially when the connection was intense. But pause for a moment and ask yourself this: why is he silent now? Why the sudden withdrawal after all that effort? Often, it's not because he lost interest. It's because he wants to see if you will take over the work. He's hoping you'll chase. There's a very subtle and manipulative dynamic that plays out in relationships when one person steps back strategically. The goal isn't always to end things. Sometimes it's just to reverse roles, to flip the emotional power. When a man begins with effort, attention, and pursuit, but then suddenly retreats, it creates a vacuum. And if you're emotionally invested, you'll feel that emptiness intensely. That's when the temptation comes in. Send a message, check in, ask what's wrong. But that reaction is exactly what he's betting on. When he stops showing up, he wants to see if you'll start. When he gets quiet, he wants to know if you'll speak up. He's not detached, he's calculating. And the moment you begin chasing, you hand over all your power. You show him he doesn't have to invest anymore. You'll do it for both of you. That's the real goal behind the silence. Not distance, but dominance. Here's the deeper truth. He may still be obsessed with you, but obsession doesn't always come with maturity. He may feel deeply, but he might lack the emotional tools to handle vulnerability. So instead of expressing, he withdraws. Instead of risking rejection, he creates confusion. And in that confusion, he tests your boundaries. Will you abandon your standards to keep his attention? Will you trade your self-respect for a few crumbs of reassurance? That's what the silence is asking, not out loud, but silently, through absence, inconsistency, and unpredictability. Chasing in this moment feels like connection, but it's actually control, just not yours. The one who waits for the message holds more power than the one who sends it first out of panic. And once he knows you'll come running every time he goes missing, the dynamic changes permanently. You're no longer a mystery. You're a guarantee. You're no longer the one he pursued. You're now the one who follows, wondering what you did wrong. The truth is, real interest doesn't need manipulation. A man who genuinely values you doesn't retreat to make you question your worth. He steps forward with clarity. He communicates even when it's hard. He doesn't rely on silence to spark your attention. If he has to disappear to get your focus, he's not looking for love. He's looking for control. Letting someone go silent without chasing doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself more. It means you respect yourself enough to not play games just to hold someone's attention. It means you're not available to be emotionally toyed with, and ironically, it's that strength, that refusal to chase, that often pulls them back harder than any message you could have sent. Don't give away your dignity to decode mixed signals. Don't abandon your peace to prove your worth. If he's hoping you'll chase, let him stay hoping. Let him live in that uncertainty, that silence he's using. Let it echo back to him. Let him wonder. Let him feel the weight of his own distance. Because the moment you choose self-respect over reaction, you win the only game that matters, the one where your value speaks louder than your need to be chosen. Ask ChatGPT, you said, obsession shows up in hidden ways, not always through words expanded in 600 words, but don't add subtitle and conclusion. ChatGPT said, obsession is a quiet force. It doesn't always come with grand gestures or midnight confessions. In fact, some of the deepest obsessions are the ones that go unspoken, unnoticed, and hidden behind silence. We often look for obvious signs, calls, texts, long messages, emotional breakdowns, but what we fail to see is that obsession has a more subtle language, one that's harder to read but even more powerful when understood. When someone is obsessed but trying to keep it together, you won't see them pouring their heart out. You'll see them watching, waiting, calculating. You'll feel their presence even when they're not around. You'll catch glimpses of their attention in the smallest details, the songs they post, the things they like on social media, the friends they still talk to just to keep tabs on you. You think he's gone silent, but his silence is filled with noise. His distance is full of signals. He might not reach out, but he's still lingering in your digital world. Viewing every story, not missing a single post, maybe even posting things of his own that feel like they're meant for you. Quotes, captions, memories. That's not coincidence. That's communication without words. That's his way of staying connected while pretending he's moved on. Obsession doesn't always want to be seen. Sometimes it hides because of pride. Sometimes it hides because of fear. But the feelings are still there, boiling beneath the surface. When a man is obsessed and doesn't know how to process it, he becomes a master of disguise. He doesn't disappear, he watches, he doesn't speak, he signals, he doesn't chase, he waits for you to notice his presence without him having to show up directly. You'll hear about it from others. Maybe mutual friends say, he was asking about you. Or you find out he still brings up your name in conversations. He might not call you, but he hasn't deleted your photos. He hasn't unfollowed you. He still keeps the door open, even if just a crack. That's obsession with boundaries. It's his way of staying close enough to feel you, but far enough not to be vulnerable. And here's the twist. The more he tries to hide it, the more it consumes him, because obsession grows in silence. The less he says, the more he feels. Every memory he tries to suppress becomes louder in his mind. Every place that reminds him of you becomes a trigger. And though he doesn't say it, he carries you in his thoughts every day, in every quiet moment. That's the thing about real emotional impact. It doesn't go away when communication stops. It lingers. It attaches itself to his routines, his moods, his choices. Obsession isn't always loud. It's not always in your face. It doesn't always beg for you back. Sometimes it's in the hesitation before he sends a message he never sends. Sometimes it's in the way he can't bring himself to block you, even when he knows he should. Sometimes it's in the way he still listens to the playlist you made or visits the place you both loved just to feel something familiar. He might not talk to you, but he's talking about you in his head every day, and while you're wondering why he's quiet, he's battling everything he feels and everything he doesn't want you to see. That's the nature of hidden obsession. It thrives on restraint. It's the ache behind the mask, the tension behind the silence. You may not hear it in words, but you can feel it in his patterns. Obsession doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And if you pay close enough attention, you'll realize he never really let go. He just buried it deep, hoping you'd still feel it without him having to say a word. You said, silence isn't closure, it's a clue expanded in 600 words. But don't add subtitle and conclusion, ChatGPT said. Silence can feel like a full stop. Like the story has ended without warning. One day you're in deep conversations, sharing thoughts, making memories, and then suddenly nothing. No explanation, no confrontation, just silence, and in that void your mind starts spinning. You begin to fill in the blanks with your own assumptions. You wonder what you did wrong. You try to find closure where none was given. But here's the truth. Silence isn't closure. It's a clue. When someone goes silent, they're still communicating. They may not be using words, but they're sending a message loud and clear. The silence says, I don't want to deal with this. Or I'm not ready to face you. Or worse, I want you to feel uncertain. And if you're not careful, you'll misread that silence as indifference or rejection. But often, it's the exact opposite. Sometimes the person who says the least is feeling the most. They don't know how to express it, or they're afraid of what expression would cost them. So they go quiet and hope the silence will speak for them. When someone walks away without a word, that's not closure. That's emotional avoidance, and the clue it gives you is powerful. It tells you exactly how they handle pressure, conflict, or intimacy. It shows you the emotional maturity they're working with. Silence is rarely neutral. It's either avoidance, punishment, fear, or confusion. All of those are clues not about your worth, but about their limitations. The problem is, most people think silence gives them permission to obsess. You replay the last message, the last moment, the last touch. You think if you just say the right thing, they'll return. You confuse their quiet exit with your unfinished feelings, and in doing so, you stay stuck in a space that was never truly explained, but always felt. That's why silence is so dangerous. It invites fantasy. It gives space for illusion. You imagine they're doing fine while you're not, or that they've moved on without a thought, when in reality, they could be just as emotionally torn, but too afraid to admit it. Sometimes silence is used as a form of control. The one who disappears first often feels they gain the upper hand, because while you're left searching for closure, they've already created the power dynamic they speak through absence, and now you're forced to listen. That's not closure, that's manipulation, and the clue in that behavior is that they need to be chased. They want to be missed. They're still invested, but only on their terms. That isn't strength. That's fear wearing confidence like a mask. The most painful thing about silence is how it leaves you doing all the emotional labor. You're the one asking the questions. You're the one trying to understand. But what you must realize is this: their silence gives you the information you need. It tells you who they are when things get hard. It shows you how they choose comfort over clarity, ego over empathy, and mystery over maturity. And you don't need more words to know that. You don't need to hear them say, "I'm confused," or "I'm scared," or "I didn't know how to face you." Their silence already told you that. The real closure isn't in their explanation, it's in your understanding. And the moment you stop begging for a response and start reading the silence for what it is, you take your power back. Silence doesn't end the story. It just changes the narrator, and now it's your turn to write the next chapter, this time without needing a single word from them to do it.